It was Halloween night 2018, cold, quiet, and darker than usual. My parents were out at a neighbor's costume party, and I'd been given one job: stay home, hand out candy, and keep the dog calm. My mom always overdid it with the candy, enough to last until Christmas. We lived at the end of a dead-end street, so we barely got any trick-or-treaters. Still, she insisted. Someone has to make the neighborhood feel festive. That someone was me. By 8 o'clock, the streets were nearly silent. A few leftover candy wrappers rolled by in the wind. I'd just finished watching an old horror movie, my dog Jasper asleep at my feet, when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. Then it rang again. One long, deliberate ding-dong. Jasper barked like he'd lost his mind. I muted the TV, grabbed the bowl of candy, and went to the front door. Standing outside was someone in a clown costume, but not the fun, colorful kind. This one was faded and grimy, like it had seen too many Halloweens. The mask was oversized, with a cracked grin and hollow eyes that caught the porch light in an awful way. He didn't say a word, just waved, then pointed at the small, half-empty pillowcase in his hand. I didn't open the door, only spoke through the glass. "Sorry," I said, "we're all out." It was a lie. The bowl in my hand was still full. But something about his height, the way he stood, told me he wasn't a kid, not even close. He didn't move, didn't lower the bag, just stared. I locked the door and stepped back, heart thudding. Maybe it was some college kid playing a prank. Maybe. Then, ding-dong, again and again. Each press of the bell slower, harder, echoing through the empty house. Jasper barked nonstop. I picked him up, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. I stood at the top of the staircase, listening. No more doorbell, no footsteps, just silence. Then, suddenly, crack! Metal snapping. He was forcing the storm door. My stomach dropped. A second later came the knocks, 3 heavy thuds that made the front door shake in its frame. I backed into my room, locked the door, and texted my parents, then my brother. No reply. After 5 long minutes, the knocking stopped. I sat on the edge of my bed, waiting, every sound amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge downstairs. Finally, I let myself breathe. Maybe he'd gone. I turned off the lamp, pulled the blanket up, and tried to sleep. That's when Jasper started growling. Not barking, just that low, guttural growl dogs do when they know something you don't. He was staring at the window. My bedroom window was on the 2nd floor. No balcony, no ledge, nothing. Then came the sound, a faint thump, something brushing against the glass. Then another thump, closer. I whispered, "No way," and went to the window. I pulled the curtain back an inch, just enough to peek, and froze. There he was, the clown. His mask inches from the glass, fogging it as he breathed. The cracked smile gleamed in the moonlight, and he tilted his head, slowly, like a curious animal. I screamed. Jasper went berserk. I bolted, slamming my door behind me, sprinting to my parents' room, locking it, fumbling my phone with shaking hands as I called 911. The dispatcher kept telling me to stay calm. I couldn't. Every few seconds, I begged her, "Please hurry, please." It felt like an hour, but police arrived in 10 minutes. When they searched outside, they found the storm door latch broken clean off, and beneath my window, my dad's old aluminum ladder. It had been taken from the shed. He'd been climbing up to me. That night, I went to sleep at my friend Brandon's house across town. We never heard anything more about it. No arrests, no reports. But I'll never forget that mask, or the way it fogged up when he breathed. Sometimes, when I close my curtains at night, I swear I can still see the shape of that grin behind the glass. This is a disturbing memory from my young childhood. I was about 7 or 8 years old. My mom would usually take my brother and I trick-or-treating, but this particular year, after school, she dropped me off at my friend Sean's house, where Sean, our friend Johnny, and I would go together. Johnny and Sean were a year older than me. We met while I was playing with my brother on the block. Johnny and Sean lived around the block from me. Sean had a weird upbringing that I never really understood. His sister was like 20 years old. There was a big gap between them. She was always his caretaker, it seemed. Whenever I was at his house always smelled like cat, and his sister always had a different guy over. It seemed like his sister was always cold to me, in the sense that she'd never acknowledge me or say hi or anything. Sean's dad was never in the picture, and his mom, I believe, was always working out of town. I guess I only met Sean's mom a few times. We never really stayed in touch for long enough for me to figure all this out. Anyway, my mom dropped me off at Shaw's, expecting that Sean's mom would be trick-or-treating with us. After saying goodbye, I went into his house. Johnny was already there. We all had big pillow sacks to fill with candy. This was around the time that I learned that neither Sean's mom nor sister were coming with us. I was young, so I sort of felt slightly uncomfortable knowing that Johnny and Sean would be leading the way. But at the same time, I felt a sense of excitement that we'd have more freedom. I knew for a fact my mom would not have approved of us going unsupervised, though. So eventually we were off into the neighborhood, walking around, doing our rounds. Door to door, quite a few people asked if we were alone or where our parents were, and Johnny would always be the one to use the same lie, that his mom is up ahead with his sister. It worked every time. This was on a Friday, so we didn't get to start a trick-or-treating until around 5 o'clock, but we didn't have school the next day, so we intended on going until our pillow sacks were completely full. We took a break after a couple of hours and went to Shaw's, where he heated up a bunch of frozen pizzas. At the time, I was so jealous of the apparent freedom he had. In his house, not having parents who cared about what he did, but looking back now, I count myself super blessed to have grown up in a household with 2 strict parents. After we hung out at his house for an hour and watched Halloween specials on Nickelodeon while eating pizza and candies, Johnny eventually was picked up by his mom. But Sean and I wanted to keep going, so we eventually headed back out for round 2. It was dark out now, and it had to be past 8 p.m. There were a lot less trick-or-treaters now. We tried to go to certain blocks we hadn't gone down yet, which meant straying further away from Sean's house. We found a block we hadn't touched yet, and continued knocking on doors. Some houses didn't answer at this hour, and mostly everyone else had a comment about us being alone or how it's getting late. We noticed a man pushing a stroller a couple houses down behind us. He was walking very slowly in our direction, probably a dad trick-or-treating for his young child. As we continued going door to door, the man with the stroller got closer. Eventually, he heard him going, "Shh," and singing softly. Eventually, he caught up to us and he said, "How's the trick-or-treating going, boys?" And we replied, "Good," at the same time. And then he said, "It's pretty late. I'm on my way back to my house. I can give you guys the rest of my candy." Sean and I looked at each other with telling faces, as if we'd just hit the jackpot. Sean asked, "What kind of candies?" And he said, "A bunch of bags of different things." He said he didn't get to give much away because he wanted to take his daughter out for a trick-or-treat stroll. He did have a bag dangling on one of the handles of the stroller which was filled with some candies. The stroller was fully covered by a folding piece on the top, so we couldn't see his daughter. He said she's asleep and he didn't want to wake her up. But he pointed ahead and said his house is just up this way. So we followed behind him as he pushed the stroller. He was walking a little faster now. As we walked, I realized there was next to no one else out at this point, even though it was a Friday night. It seemed like a quieter side of the neighborhood. The man talked to us as we walked, asking us questions, what part of the neighborhood we were from, where we went to school, basic stuff. I let Sean answer most of the questions. Him being even just a year older than me at that age, I felt like he was the one who should take lead. On multiple occasions, as we walked, the man would lean into the stroller and talk in a high pitch to his daughter. Then he turned back and smiled at us. We finally made it to his house. He led us up the walkway with the stroller and unlocked his door. After we opened it, he brought the stroller with his daughter inside first and then invited us to come inside. Sean led the way, so I followed. I was the one to ask if we could leave the door open, and the man paused and then said, "Yeah, of course." He said he'll be right back as he goes to get the candy bags. He pushed the stroller into the middle of the living room, only about 10 feet away from where we were standing. I nudged Sean because I felt uncomfortable. I whispered, "Why would he leave the candy so far away?" Sean didn't respond. Instead, he turned toward the living room and then walked up to the stroller. He lifted up the folding part that was covering the baby, and he looked disturbed. He hurried back to me, whispering, "Let's go." He was full on running once we got outside, and I followed behind, which was a bit tougher because we had those heavy pillow sacks. I still was confused about what he saw, but just then we heard a woman's voice. "Yeah, excuse me?" It was one of his neighbors. She came running over to us and asked if we know that man. And it was at this point that Sean spilled the beans and said he offered us his leftover candy, but he was pushing a stroller with a fake baby in it. I remember getting goosebumps as he said that. The woman said, "Yeah, that man doesn't have a child. I saw you was walking by with him." She took us to her car and drove each of us home. I know getting into a stranger's car after that was another questionable move. The woman came to my front door to talk to my mom about what we just told her. My mom was distraught after I told her every last detail about the night. She sent me to my room while my parents called the police on that man. My parents never told me anything about what happened after that. I believe they wanted to shelter me from any more exposure to the situation. My mom didn't want me going over to Sean's house anymore, and I know she had quite a bit to say to Sean's mom. I did see Sean at school once in a while still, and we'd remain cordial, but our friendship was never the same after that. It was the Saturday before Halloween, Halloweekend. Halloween itself fell on a Tuesday that year, so every college kid was out early celebrating. My friends and I still didn't have plans. Every bar was packed, every event sold out. We just wanted a house party, something cheap, loud, and fun. That's when Brianna got a message. She'd posted a story on Instagram saying, "Anyone throwing a party tonight?" Within minutes, someone replied, a guy named Eli, who said his friend Mason was hosting a big Halloween party one town over. He sent her an address, a start time, and a few rules. Indoor only, bring your own drinks, one girl per guy. It sounded like every college party ever. We didn't think twice. So there we were, me, Brianna, Tessa, and Ava, dressed up, pre-gaming in Tessa's apartment. By 9, we called an Uber and headed out, music blasting, drinks in hand. When we pulled up, the street was lined with cars. The house looked huge, old but well kept, with faint orange lights glowing inside. The bass thumped behind the door. We exchanged a look. Jackpot. A man answered before we even knocked.
Older, late 40s, maybe 50. He smiled wide and said, "Welcome. I'm Grant, Mason's dad. Come in, girls." "Where's Mason?" Brianna asked. Grant chuckled. "Around somewhere. You'll meet him soon." He ushered us inside. The place was dim, lit only by string lights and fake cobwebs.
The air smelled faintly of alcohol and something sweet, maybe cleaner. Grant took our drinks and offered to keep them cold in one of the coolers in the kitchen. There were 3 of them, all half full of beer, ice, and plastic cups. He told us to make ourselves at home, and oddly, there wasn't a single other parent in sight. We started playing beer pong with some random guys. Grant hovered nearby, handing out shots and cracking jokes that landed flat. At one point, he yelled across the room, calling out mine and Brianna's names. "Shots, ladies!" When I said our friends should join too, he waved his hand. Of course, the more the merrier. The tequila burned all the way down. I gagged and laughed at the same time. He laughed too, but he didn't blink. There was something hollow in his stare. After that, everything started to blur. I remember Grant asking what we liked to drink. I remember him mixing something in red cups. Then, blank. Just fragments. Lights, noise, laughter turning metallic. Then nothing. When I woke up, I was in a car parked outside my house. My head was spinning. My clothes smelled like smoke and cheap vodka. One of our guy friends, Josh, helped me to my door. He didn't say much, just, "You're home, sleep it off." Inside, the house was dark. I went straight to my room, collapsed on the bed, and checked my phone. There were texts from an unknown number. "Hey, beautiful." "It's Grant." "Where did you go?" "You left something here." "I'm outside." "Come to the door." 3 missed calls, all around 2 a.m. My stomach turned. I sent screenshots to the group chat. That's when everything came flooding back, or rather, when my friends filled in the blanks. They said I started acting out of it not long after the drinks Grant made. Slurred speech, unfocused eyes. He was hovering near me, touching my arm, asking if I wanted to see Mason. They'd pulled me away, convinced something was wrong. When we left, 2 police cars had just pulled up down the street. Noise complaint, we thought. But what we hadn't noticed was that the house had no furniture. Not a couch, not a TV, not even curtains. Just beer pong tables and empty rooms. The next morning, Josh looked up the number Grant had texted me from. It was a VoIP number, fake, untraceable, and worse, with my phone number, he could easily find my address. We went straight to the police station. When we gave them the address, the officer frowned and said, "You mean the abandoned property?" We stared at him. He explained that neighbors had called in about a loud party at a vacant house, one that had been empty for months. There was no Mason, no family, no furniture, just a man pretending to host a college party. They said they'd investigate, but we never heard another word. No arrests, no updates. Sometimes I still check the listing online. The house is still vacant. Same address, same porch light, but last week someone updated the Zillow photos, and in one of them, standing just inside the front door, you can see a shadow. Tall, broad-shouldered, smiling.